This is Elisa Reyes, and you're listening to Deeper Than Music.
Deeper Than Music Radio.
Hi, this is Venus DeMilo Thomas. You're listening to Deeper Than Music.
Deeper Than Music. The core of you, the fans, the truth. It's deeper than music, deeper than music. Simply the truth is the latest, the new is. It's deeper than music, deeper than music. The core of you, the fans, the truth. It's deeper than music, deeper than music. Simply the truth is the latest, the new is. It's deeper than music, deeper than music.
Hello, 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 hello. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. Deeper Than Music Radio. Behind every great song, there's an even greater story. I'd like to say what's up to everybody listening to us on iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Spreaker, and we're now on your Amazon Alexa. So be sure to ask her to play Furious's Deeper Than Music Radio show. So today, ladies and gentlemen, we have a very special guest. I was just conversating with a couple of my friends. During these times of COVID, it seems like it's just a perfect storm of everything that is, it's like, to me, it's almost like a Stephen King movie. Right now, everything that is wrong and everything that is bad in the world is being exposed, and we're having, as a society, to look in the mirror and look at the cracks in our mirror. But with that, also, during this time, I've never seen so many movements, Me Too, Black Lives Matter, so on and so forth. But we have a very special guest. One thing that I say is great art likes to provoke. It likes to shake you. And this director, just watched her film. Phenomenal job. It leaves you thinking, and it brings up some valid points that some of us are uncomfortable to deal with and don't want to deal with. So, ladies and gentlemen, we have Dutch filmmaker Miriam Kruishoop here on Deeper Than Music Radio. Miriam, how you doing? Yes, I want to say thank you. Thank you for, because the film you did, I wonder about people sometimes and who they stand by. And it's like, okay, this person is not for you, but you stand by them. The movie that I'm talking about is Estilo Americano. If you don't mind, could you give us a synopsis of this movie?
Sure. It's a short film about a Mexican-American family that comes together over Thanksgiving. And the family is politically divided. So during the dinner gathering, everyone is revealing their opinion because it takes place during our Trump era. And we see that everyone has a very different experience and opinion, and also experience of what it's like, what the Latino identity is like. So basically the whole thing escalates, and there's some truth being revealed. And, it's a story about America today. It's a slice of America today that I feel people don't talk about enough.
Yeah, it's like, and we were talking earlier, most people, it's like, look, if it doesn't affect me, if it's not in my little bubble, I could care less. I don't want to deal with it. But my question for you is, in regards to this movie, in regards to what you do, because your main cause, or the main movies you focus on, are what you call the invisible, the people that in America that aren't the haves, the people that aren't the majority, that do experience racism and things of that nature. What was the motivation behind this particular work?
Well, like you said, I'm a filmmaker and a visual artist, and throughout my work, I always create platforms and give voices to people that I feel that are unseen. So I use my privilege, I'll be really honest, to create these platforms. And I've lived in America for a long time, and I respond to my surroundings. And in particular case with Estilo Americano, I have a lot of Latino friends. And looking how Trump was picking on the Latino community. And I'm like, border walls, separating families at the border. And it just like that narrative was so extreme. And I said to a lot of friends of mine, I'm like, where are the Black Panthers? Where are the Malcolm X's? Like, why are you not voting and standing up against it? So for me, that was a really big question mark. So I dug a little deeper and started to have more conversations about this. And it turned out that a lot of personal friends of mine their family is very divided. So it's not an easy conversation to have. And also what I learned from that is that, like I said, the Latino identity, if you're born here or whether you come from a Latin American country, which could be Puerto Rico or El Salvador or Mexico, which is very different culturally. Just because we're united by a language doesn't mean your experience and your culture is the same. So as the government does, and media as well, by the way, just talk about this group, right, which is so diverse, really, as one big group, which it's just really wrong. So I really wanted to explore that, and I wanted to create a story that addresses these difficulties that exist within families, and also for myself to understand where they come from. Like, a lot of people are very religious, right, and therefore they're on the conservative side, and some people feel they're afraid to speak out, and someone else is closer to me, so I could create a lot of voices and characters that represent an opinion. And I wanted to be sort of objective as well, because this family, you see, they love each other. They are, it's a loving family. They care about each other, but God, they're all over the place,
Yeah. And my experience is, especially, if you're successful, or if you did the pathway to being doing what is the American way. From my perspective, I'm an African American. I come from a military family. I'm a veteran. And I've been blessed. I've been blessed. I've experienced my share of racism, but I've been pretty successful. However, a lot of minorities, they think if you're successful, you should be far removed from it. But it's like, no, these are my family members. These are humans. Like, I still stagger to think about the 500 kids, and anybody who's human, or anybody that's a Christian. How could we let this happen? You know what I mean? How could we let this get to where we get to? And I like that you discover, because all the characters come from a different background. I mean, they're family, but they have a different pathway. And because their life is a certain way, it also sets that divide. And I like how you created that dialogue, because this could be any family of color, any Latin American family, any family of color right now that is the target of this administration.
Yeah, I mean, I agree, but I would like to take it even further, I mean, it's any table USA in a way.
Yeah, that's true.
It's like this country is so divided, and also amongst Caucasians, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's not what initially the idea was, obviously. But, I also have a friend, we're very, very, very close. And, he stands on the other side for me. So our relationship has become a little strained, you know what I mean? And so I experience it directly as well. And some people, we don't talk at the moment. And I'm like, all right, I'm okay with that.
Yeah, no, you're right. Because I have friends, both black and white. And I've had to unfriend some people, like, you're crazy. And another interesting fact that I like to point out as well is, you see it. You're Dutch. You're from Dutch. You're Dutch from Holland, and you see it from a different perspective. And I have friends from all over the world, and they will not come to America right now. But you see it from a different angle. Like, I have friends from Norway and Sweden. There's like crazy Americans. I have friends from Canada. Like, ain't no way in hell that I would. Like, how is it? You see it from a different. I wonder if you're like, you have that thought of like, what is going on with America right now? What is going on with Americans?
Well, obviously my European friends are like, what the F is going on there? When you're coming home, this is crazy. And I'm like, well, look, I also have an American passport. So America is my home, right?
Oh, yeah.
I love this country, because even though, like, it's great to have an insider-outsider perspective. I did another movie 6 years ago called Greencard Warriors, which might appeal to you, about recruitment during the Bush era of undocumented Latinos with the promise of a green card to join the military. So I made a film about that, and I was like, it wasn't really touched upon, that subject, but it's something that I read and I saw was happening, in East LA, and I'm like, damn, that really touches me. And these big billboards about recruitment, very clearly positioned in areas, not Beverly Hills. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So that makes me think. And I also feel like because I have a little bit of distance, and I dare say grow up in a country that's incredibly progressive, that had its own growing pains and of course, a very questionable history. But I do think the difference is that we've acknowledged that and embraced that, right?
Yes.
I grew up learning how terrible our history is. And I think the difference in America, they're in denial about their history. They're trying to suppress it. And I think that's a very big thing that needs to change here, and go on the good side of history. And, it also gives me a little bit, I don't know how to say it, like, because I'm doing it in my art already, it's like, I'm just going to do it. I'm just going to, because I don't have that weight on my shoulders, if you know what I mean.
Yes.
I'm not Latin. I'm not African American. I'm an outsider who really understands America well. I've lived here for 20 years.
Yes.
So I just do it.
and I think it's good that you, seeing it from the outside, you kind of don't have those, like, not, I wouldn't say triggers, but you can honestly see it objectively from this side, from that side. Because a lot of times our experiences shape how we may think and see stuff. And sometimes because of our experiences, we're closed off to certain things. Like, say, for instance, I don't like chocolate because I had a bad experience with chocolate. And you bring up chocolate, I'm closed off. So I like to use that analogy. And I want to start from, like, kind of going to the past. Did you always know that you wanted to be a visual artist and a creator or director? Like, how did that manifest?
It's a funny story, and it has a lot to do with America, actually. Well, as a kid, I drove my parents crazy, right? I grew up in the 80s on MTV and just watching Scarface every weekend. And I was really into sports as well, and I wanted to be a competitive tennis player, and I did really well. And at the age of 15, I got a really bad injury, and I couldn't play anymore. And I was so depressed, and my parents were like, she won't speak, what are we going to do? So they sent me to America for like 6 weeks, because the children of my godparents went to school in America. So long story short, went to Chicago, New York, had the time of my life, came back with all the new gadgets, and we ended up on a plane with the Chicago Bulls and seeing Michael Jordan, and I'm like, this is so that was like an amazing experience. So I came back after those 6 weeks, which was during school time actually, which was like extraordinary with all these, cool music and cool gear. And I just said to my parents, like, it has such an impact. I'm like, I'm going to become a filmmaker and artist. Like, that was my calling, and I never looked back. So that was 15. And America had a lot to do with it. Like, even though now it seems very inward, when I came from Europe at the time, American culture was dictating, like, globally, and just see so much diversity on the street. And it was just so inspiring. And it was, the trains in New York, the subway, they looked so dope. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
So it was just like TV shows come alive. And it was just really inspiring, So that always stayed with me.
And that's pretty awesome, meeting Michael Jordan. Then, like, when you say, like, you can go anywhere, one thing I love about...
I didn't meet him. He was on the plane, and I snuck in first class, and I'm like, so dope,
But even getting to see him, like, wow, that's like a once in a lifetime type of deal. And then, like you say, New York, you can walk 3 blocks. You're in Spanish Harlem. 3 blocks, you're in Little Italy, and it's just it's such a cultural melting pot. And I know throughout your career, especially being in Holland, you've won some awards and acclaim as well as you progressed.
Yeah, no. So after I finished high school, I went to Art Academy, and I studied audiovisual, and it was like an amazing school with like incredible teachers. And then my last year I went to Paris to do an exchange there, and that's where I shot my first feature. And it was just like, I felt like I really used the opportunities, but I've always looked a little further, I was always looking, because Holland is a very small country. It's a super dope country, without a doubt. And like I said, it's really open, and we don't have abortion on the fucking bill. You know what I mean? That's since before I was born. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
so
yeah.
it allows you really, and obviously it's a privileged country, it's well off, so it allows you to really find your calling very quickly, you know. But you need to get inspiration, and I really like to talk about maybe uncomfortable things, you know, and they're really inspiring, and just like knowing that things can be better and having experienced that as well.
Yeah,
so.
And that's what I liked about the film, because I was like, oh, she went there with that. Yes, please talk about that, you know, because it's like, you know, I sit here sometimes and I'm like, I wonder. And then, you know, I'm the type of person, if you have a different opinion, because everybody has a different story, like it's not one size fits all. I want to know, okay, you're from this side of the perspective, but why? I just want to know why, because maybe I haven't seen this perspective, and it's within that 20 some odd minutes is very uncomfortable, but very necessary. I feel like in order to shake people up, you have to shock them. You have to give them something to think about, and you know, this is going to be the conversation of the night tonight. Like, look, you know, I also wanted to ask your calling. How did that happen? Your calling of like, look, this is the cause that I want to fight for. Was there a moment or an epiphany? Like, what led to your calling?
That's a great question. You know, first, like wanting to make films and art, it's something that's very intuitive, you know? It's like why people want to pursue sports, right? I love sports. I love the competitiveness. I love the direct emotion. So I think when you watch a movie or the art, like sort of how that moves you, and it's like so intimate, right? With music, it's just you. And that's what I loved about tennis as well. It's just you on your own on the court, and you got to figure it out. So when I translated that into trying to do something meaningful, you know, and growing up with art, it was like, that's what I want to do. So, you know, you start out, you're a little bit more self-indulgent, right? You write stories about whatever, lonely girls, and you focus really on the people, you know, and like being really arty, smoking cigarettes in Paris and all that. And then you kind of, you know, you discover the world, and you see there's so many really important stories to be told. So I actually, you know, you find your craft, and then it sort of defines itself as you grow older. And, you know, coming in America, again, it had a lot to do with it, because you see a country with so much amazing potential, so many amazing people, so much diversity, you know.
Yes.
And seeing how it's struggling. And I'm like, man, especially even in California, it's so wealthy, but you drive half an hour that way, and sort of the poverty is intimidating, you know?
Oh, yeah.
And so I was like, you know, staying here, I got a lot to talk about. And that's really inspiring, you know, in a way. And, you know, I think there's a little activist inside of me, obviously, you know, using art to tell these kind of stories and create awareness and conversations. And I also feel like you either love people or you don't. And I feel like I have empathy. And I always say, everybody has a story. Any kid, Greencard as well. You have this little kid, you know, with a shaved head on a little trick bike. And it's so easy to say he's just a little gangbanger, right? And there's such a big story behind it. And for me, it's like open people's eyes and giving that platform to share, because we're all human. We all want the same. And I
Exactly.
Like, you may look different than me. You may speak a different language. But, oh, my God, you also just want your children to do a little bit better. You also just want to get by and love thy neighbor, you know. And I did a show last year in Europe, which was called Living in America. And I worked with a girl that I actually met through a cop, which is a really interesting story. And she's from Nickerson Gardens in Watts. And we created a choreography and this was in early 2019. And I was like, this is not going well. And you could feel like, you know, racism has always been, you know, there in America, right?
Yeah.
But like, you have a president that's catering to that. This is going to go off. So I asked her, she's 18 at the time, and I said, I would love for you to tell your story, what it's like to be a Gen Z African-American girl growing up in America today. And, you know, it was right after Nipsey Hussle got killed, and it was just like, man, it was so negative, and I just found these kids, all teenagers that I worked with, and we created a really powerful show and a really powerful video installation, just her on her own telling the story, and I'm like, this is not good, right? And the reality, so I just like the combination of, I guess, activism and art, and it's something you can't really explain, like why do you love hip hop so much, it just speaks to you, right? So, I hide behind all these beautiful people that are giving voice to things that I find important,
But you bring up a good point, because I tell people it's all about connecting on a human level, and we're all human, we're all interconnected, and I just feel like people have their lines. In America we talk about the train tracks of the division between this community and that community, and people don't communicate. We don't communicate because 9 times out of 10, if you talk to somebody, you'll find a connection somewhere, because we're all connected. We, like you said, we all experience things. And I like to say just thank you for being the artist you are, the director you are, because this is going to be imprinted in my mind. My mind keeps going back to the conversations had in the movie. It's just like, wow. And I hope. And we're talking about this administration, and even I don't know how it is in LA, but I recently moved to Illinois from Texas, but even here we're on high alert, because we don't know what's going to happen after the election. We don't know, how it's going to pan out. And these are times like, wow, I tell people, this is 2020, not 1968. So what do you hope viewers will get out of this movie?
Look, first of all, America's a country of immigrants, right? White immigrants, black immigrants that didn't choose to come here, and Latino immigrants, which part of them already lived here for centuries, okay?
Yes.
So we need to understand that being American, either you're going to call people European American, African American, Latin American, or call everybody American. So this division of what American really is, we need to, get over that. This is a country of immigrants. Trump is like first generation, isn't he? His parents came from Scotland and Germany.
That is correct. Yeah.
Let's call it what it is. Let's talk about these things and let's just call it out. So I think move away from stereotypes, because that's another thing. In media and entertainment, when Latino stories are portrayed, and in Greencard Warriors, I also spoke about the undocumented family, right? But now I wanted to show a middle-class, educated family. It's not something that you see very much, right? Mm-hmm. So, understand the contribution of everyone and move away from misconceptions and stereotypes and allow people to tell their story, because you never know. And I think the 2 films that I've done here in the States, they're all about that, like it's not what you see. Don't judge a book by its cover, and understand we all want the same, and understand really what the concept of America is,
Yeah. No, you're right. It's like you said, it's a land of immigrants. And I like you brought up another point, we're all American, but then, and I was actually thinking about this last week. When somebody says all American, what do you see in your mind, right?
Yeah. To me, again, when I go back to my trip here in the late 80s, it was really about seeing how diverse this country was and how awesome I thought that was.
Yeah.
It was like I've seen the most beautiful, diverse looking people, which Amsterdam, we have a fair share of things, but not on the scale. And I'm like, this is so powerful. And I just fell in love with it. But you know what? America, aspires to be a democracy, but it's not. And to me, it's in these little things, defining what an American is, right? That family that you saw in Estilo Americano, they're American, right?
Yes.
There is only the immigrant version of American. And if we talk about Native Americans, they're completely kept out of the conversation, which is a whole other thing. So they are truly American, but they wouldn't call themselves American because we gave it the name, right? So it's again, it's like talking about these things, redefining them, and even out the playing field for everyone and giving equal opportunities. But the biggest discovery for me was when I moved here, that realizing how incredibly racist the system was built. Where I come from today, that is not the case. You know what I mean? And that was shocking to me. And this is a Western first world country, the richest country on the planet. We can't look after everyone? Wow.
Yeah, and that's true. And you said something else, like America's never reconciled or come to terms or even admitted what was done to the indigenous Americans. And I actually thought about this today, was like manifest destiny, because in our history books, they always talk about manifest destiny. And I was thinking today, manifest destiny came at the cost of the American Indian. And we've never had that conversation. And even now, it's like so when I was had to go to therapy because I used to bottle things up. I never dealt with the trauma that happened in my life. And my therapist told me, like, look, if you don't deal with this, it's going to keep bubbling. It's going to keep coming up. And I think that's the issue here. America has never dealt with this trauma or the drama it's inflicted on people. And until we deal with it and reconcile it, it's going to keep coming up. Like, I'm so tired of, hearing about somebody being shot by the cops, the systematic racism, but we never address it. So we're going to keep bringing it up. It's going to keep coming up until we deal and reconcile with it.
Well, again, what happened yesterday, right, with, what's his first name, Wallace, I just don't understand, first of all, that why do you have to shoot someone 7 times? I mean, you've been in the army. We all seen the mafia movie. We all know, shoot him in the foot so he's not mobile, right? Why do you have to shoot someone? Clearly, a lot of law enforcement are afraid, which I understand. But you are choosing this line of work. No one told you to go out on the streets, right?
Yes.
So it's really and now we live in such a heightened situation. Like, you gotta be at your best. And your department needs to educate you and not being given the tools, right? And now it happens again yesterday.
Yeah.
I mean, I couldn't eat. And that's me, let alone people from your community. How is this? How can you process it? How can you accept this? And I say this, and I know it's, sometimes people, don't like when I say that, but, when all the rioting started and people were like, that's wrong. I'm like, you have to understand the sentiment. You have to understand the sentiment, And again, it might be controversial, but when they looted the Macy's, I couldn't care less. Corporations have been raiding us, right? And the American people for decades. So now when this all explodes and no one's stepping in, and you have a leader that stirs the pot, right? Makes it worse. What do you expect? Because I tell you, if that happened to me or my husband or my brother, I can't say it, but I just don't understand. I'm a normal person, I feel these things, and that's what I mean, empathy. But people in America have been in denial. You look at your little safe TV channel where you only fed one thing and one narrative. It should be. Everyone should have get as much airtime, first of all. If you want to watch your movies, go to HBO, go to Netflix. But anything else, equal airtime, fact check it, and tell the truth. And there needs to be some sort of, committee. Then people say, oh, you're a socialist. Yeah, I'm a social democrat, and I'm extremely proud of that.
Yes.
That's the word social in it, right? So you mean someone else. I'm proud to pay my taxes, right?
Yes.
I'm happy. I'm not afraid of that. Too many people voting for their own agenda, for their pockets. And then again, because it's one for all, we don't feel that American thing, which is marketed really well, but people don't experience that. So it's 2 different things, right?
Exactly, yeah.
I go off a bit, I'm sorry.
No. Like I said, these are conversations that need to be had. And like you said, the idea of America is great. I mean, what we're taught in school is great. So for me, it was what you're taught in school, and then there's reality. Oh my goodness! I say there should be and I say this often, I was like, there should be in school, yes, they should have a level class, but then another class to prepare you. Okay, if you're this, you're going to go to this class because this is what you're going to experience. If you go to this, you go to this. But then they teach you this whole, idea of what America is. And then you grow up and realize, hey, wait a minute. It ain't my America. You know what I mean? It's not my experience.
My America. Exactly. That's what I experience. I'm having a tough time getting a business loan or getting a mortgage or going into a certain organization or whatever. And, it's also like people are like, oh, so you're like for defunding the police. I'm like, no, I'm the opposite. I think you should give them more money and more resources. But it's kind of shocking. And I have several amazing friends in law enforcement. But it's like, it's sort of the shortest police academy on the planet, right? And dealing with a very, very, very complex big country. So give them more money, educate them longer. And we want to feel safe. When I see police, I want to feel like, oh, the guy's going to have my back. I'm going to be safe. And that's not the case for a lot of people. And that's incredibly sad, Giving a ticket because the police is funded by giving tickets, that's not helpful.
No,
that's
it's not
helpful, and we need to change that.
And then, like some people say, like in the Navy, I used to be an air traffic controller, so I had people's lives in my hands. We controlled the aircraft in the sky and kept them separated. And there's this argument, they had a bad day, and I'm like, in my job, even though I had real life situations going on, the minute I stepped in that radar in that tower, I couldn't have a bad day, because if I had a bad day, those people in that airplane that depended on us to keep them safe in the sky, they would have died. So I'm like, that excuse is invalid. I had to have a good day every day. You know what I mean?
And thank you for what you've done. That sacrifice is enormous. But knowing the responsibility going in that line of work, you like you say, you can have a bad day. But I admire, and we need this, right? It's kind of saying, look, we don't live in a utopia. That's never going to happen because you're dealing with people. But
true, very true, very true.
We can do a lot better. So, because America has the potential, it's an amazing country, and like I said, a beautiful, inspiring place. Meeting people like yourself just gives me that boost. Like, wow, this is this country.
And Miriam, thank you so much. Where can people find the movie, and then also the other works that you talk about that I am sure now I have to check out because I love this movie. Where can they find out about you, and then what do you have going on moving forward?
Again, thank you so much, man. I really appreciate it, and having the opportunity to have such a long, profound conversation means a lot. So the film is exclusively on loscortos.com up until the election, which is a platform for Latino stories, Latino voices, artists, etc. We have an Instagram, Estilo Americano.film, and a website. And then you can find me on www.miriamkruishoop.com.
Kruishoop, okay.
And I have a little Instagram, which is not very impressive. It's mkruishoop, but I'm trying. I'm not the best at social media. I'm working on a story now, Juveniles, which is about two girls in a juvenile detention center, a white girl and a black girl, that's based on a true story that form an incredible friendship. And again, it's like I'm diving into these social justice themes, working on a film in Europe about a criminal and a little Syrian boy developing a beautiful friendship. And, just doing my thing, man. Fighting, and it's hard to get these stories made. I want to tell you that, and I want to give a shout out to my team, my cast, for committing and doing this, and my producer Ellen Utrecht, because it's risky to do these projects. It's not easy to finance them. It's really, really hard, and for everyone committing and sticking their neck out, and costs a lot of money.
Yeah, no, I can imagine, and I thank you for doing what you do. Like you're fighting a good fight, and like I said, this is more impactful than, in my opinion, a Marvel universe, because this is like on the human level, and it's something that once you see, you have something, you get something out of it. You see something for another perspective, and hopefully it'll cause a paradigm shift amongst people that watch it.
Thank you.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, Mark Kivas here with Miriam Kruishoop, and you've listened to another great episode of Deeper Than Music Radio. And make sure you go to that website and check this movie out. I implore you to watch it. You'll definitely come back with something to think about. So this is Mark Kivas and Miriam signing off. Thank you.